All right, it's about 2 o'clock, so we'll get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, I wanted to go over some best practices to ensure everyone has a chance to contribute. This meeting is being recorded and it will involve a short presentation and then some time for comments and questions at the end. You could participate in a variety of ways. For folks online, you can add questions in the chat pod throughout the meeting. You can use raise hand feature, which is on the upper menu right near the chat. And that's for folks who want to speak or ask questions verbally or visually. There is an option in the captioning to select other languages other than English. And if folks need directions on how to do that, I'm happy to help them if you want to put that in the chat. Please keep your videos off and remain muted unless necessary to sign or speak, so we have a consistent view for everyone. For folks in person, the room has microphones, if I understand this correctly, throughout, so it should pick up your questions. We're designating a specific time, as I mentioned, at the end for comments and questions, and we really value your input. We want to make sure that all your concerns are addressed and that you have. All right. The ADA transition plan draft and presentation is located on our website. These are the materials that we'll be using today for today's meeting. I did put it in the chat, but for folks who may not be able to see it, it's https://VTrans, that's VTrans.vermont.gov/ADA-transition-plan-public-meeting. Again, that's in the chat, and let me know if you have any questions finding that. All right, I don't see anything in the chat. Nobody here in the room has questions, so we'll get started. So welcome to our presentation of the Agency of Transportation's Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan. The last update was in 2020, and we're happy to present the latest update today. Our ADA Transition Plan Work Group is made up of 5 AOT staff. I'm Patricia Martin. I'm the ADA and Title VI Coordinator for the Agency of Transportation. With me today is Summer Bukosi, Active Transportation Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator, as well as Josh Taylor, Civil Engineer, who's also actively involved in active transportation. Not present is Amanda Holland, also in active transportation, and Colleen Montague, Civil Rights Director. We also have contacts throughout our agency who are data stewards collecting our progress towards compliance, as mentioned in our ADA Transition Plan acknowledgements. We also receive feedback from disability rights organizations and Federal Highway on this draft. Thank you so much for their time. We thank them so much for their time and consideration. Does anyone have any questions before we talk about the agenda? Okay. So what we're going to cover today includes discussing the ADA Transition Plan legal framework, defining an ADA transition plan, some highlights from AOT's transition plan, and some time for comments. This will be a fairly short presentation, so we'll have that time at the end for feedback. The legal framework for an ADA transition plan involves it all started out with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504. It's considered a landmark civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all programs and activities that receive federal funding. It's considered a precursor of the ADA. The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, and its Title II extends to state and local programs. It prohibits discrimination for people with disabilities and ensures equal access to programs, activities, and services. Combined with Section 504, both of these cover all areas of government. Specifically, Title II requires a self-evaluation of an agency and public notice of non-discrimination. For entities like ourselves, the Agency of Transportation, any entities over 50 employees are required to have an ADA compliance officer, a grievance procedure, and transition plan. For enforcement, the U.S. Department of Transportation through Federal Highway oversees public rights of way. The U.S. Department of Justice promotes compliance via Project Civic Access. And there's also standards and guidelines that AOT uses. The Americans with Disabilities Act Accessibility Guidelines, which has to do with buildings and sites. The Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards, which has to do with buildings and streets. And PROAG, which we'll cover next. Any questions on this slide? Okay. PROAG stands for Public Rights of Way Accessibility Guidelines, and it was developed specifically for the public right of way. A little about PROAG's history. PROAG, notice of proposed rulemaking, was issued in July of 2011. The notice was combined with the shared use pass, and that was released in February 2013. After 10 years of public feedback, the final rule was established in September of 23. Federal Highway recommended PROAG as a best practice in 24. PROAG is published by the Access Board. PROAG specifically addresses accessibility for sidewalks, streets, crosswalks, curb ramps, pedestrian signals, on-street parking, and more. It includes shared use paths for bicyclists and pedestrians, focusing on transportation and recreation. PROAG ensures comprehensive accessibility in public spaces, enhancing mobility for all users. And that's why I have the bicyclist in the background. How does AOT comply with accessibility requirements in alterations in construction? Well, through Title II and 504, as I mentioned earlier, we are required to ensure that people with disabilities have equal opportunity to participate in public entities' programs, services, and activities in the most integrated manner appropriate. So what does that mean for new construction? Well, we have to have the highest level of accessibility in our designs. We need to be free from movement and information barriers, and the facilities are deemed to be accessible if they comply with ADAG, UFAS, and PROAG, and cost should not be a consideration. So what does this mean for alterations? Well, we need flexibility to work within existing conditions. Altered portions of facilities must meet new construction requirements to the maximum extent feasible, optimize usability of each pedestrian feature, and use engineering judgment and document decision-making. Documentation is key. So let's discuss a little bit about the importance and process of conducting a self-evaluation. A self-evaluation is a comprehensive review of all programs, activities, and services operated by a public entity. It helps identify areas needing improvement to ensure ADA compliance. After the evaluation, entities can develop a transition plan for necessary structural changes. Collaboration with departments and divisions is crucial to modify policies and procedures effectively. So this entails reviewing all facilities, activities, and programs to determine compliance needs, identifying those specific departments and programs that require attention. For example, sidewalks are considered a program provided by local government. ADA awareness is also key. We need to assess whether employees are familiar with the ADA obligations. We need to make sure they understand the importance of reasonable modifications to policies, practices, and procedures. So this thorough self-evaluation is essential for fostering an inclusive and accessible environment, ensuring all public services meet ADA standards. And we do provide training for our staff in the form of quarterly meetings. So let's explore the components and importance of an ADA transition plan. The plan is developed through this thorough evaluation, as I said. It basically tells a story for making programs, activities, and services accessible. The plan uses the inventory from the self-evaluation with identified work items that limit accessibility. It outlines methods for removing barriers and making facilities accessible, and includes a schedule for completing the work, identifying the official responsible for implementing the plan, establish a clear process for addressing grievances and complaints, and basically acts as a living document evolving as needs and circumstances change. We also ensure the public is aware of our plan, and we provide opportunities like today's meeting for input. In conclusion, as Scott Winley from the U.S. Access Board once said, a self-evaluation without a plan is just a list of deficiencies that you have identified and no plan to do anything about it. So the transition plan tells the story of commitment to accessibility and action. So the official responsible and ADA coordinator. So Joe Flynn, our Secretary of Agency of Transportation, is the official responsible for representing AOT. AOT is responsible for ensuring compliance with ADA standards as they relate to the provision of transportation services, activities, and programs. In addition, the AOT remains committed to ensuring meaningful access and full participation by people with disabilities while seeking to remove remaining barriers to fair and dignified inclusion for people with disabilities. I know that's a lot. I'm the ADA coordinator, and I am the contact for ADA-related inquiries, complaints, or assistance. So with this dedicated leadership, AOT is committed to fostering an inclusive and accessible environment. This is our public notice. I pretty much talked about this on every slide, but wanted to read what we have here as far as non-discrimination notices. AOT receives federal funding for transportation and is required to adhere to ADA rules, all transportation services, activities, and programs. AOT is dedicated to ensuring that people with disabilities can fully participate in all aspects of transportation. The agency is actively working to remove barriers and enhance accessibility. So AOT does not discriminate against people with disabilities in its programs, activities, services, or hiring practice. This commitment is in line with the ADA Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. It's a vital declaration of AOT's dedication to inclusivity and equal access for all individuals. And, you know, Vermont's population, there's actually like 25% of the population of folks that have a disability, and that grows every year because of the aging population of Vermont. So it is very important. So let's discuss how sidewalks are managed and maintained within the state right-of-way. The agency does not directly maintain sidewalks within the state right-of-way. Instead, AOT has maintenance agreements with municipality to handle this responsibility. AOT constructs sidewalks and curb ramps as part of larger transportation projects. We ensure all constructions comply with relevant accessibility standards, and AOT prioritizes pedestrian safety, ensuring people can walk safely through construction zones. AOT adheres to several key guidelines and standards like PROAG, as I mentioned, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, AOT's own work zone safety and mobility policy, and pedestrian access and work zone standard notes. Through these efforts, AOT ensures safe and accessible pedestrian pathways even during construction activities. So let's explore the accessibility initiatives by the Vermont Department of Motor Vehicles and the Public Transit section. So the DMV offers interpretation and translation services for office visits, online interactions, and phone calls. Vital documents, including the driver's manual, which was recently translated in 23, have been translated into 14 most spoken languages in Vermont. They have special programs as well. They have the Deaf Visor Card, which helps individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing communicate with police officers during traffic stops or emergencies. They also have the Blue Envelope Program, which is a voluntary initiative to assist drivers with autism in communicating effectively with law enforcement. This aims to reduce stress and enhance safety during traffic stops. Our public transit section does not directly operate transportation services. Rather, it oversees recipients and subrecipients of federal funds to ensure compliance with both Title VI and ADA. Title VI covers non-discrimination in race, color, and national origin. And as we know, ADA is about non-discrimination with disabilities. These initiatives demonstrate a strong commitment to accessibility and effective communication, ensuring safety and inclusivity for all individuals. All right, so let's explore some recent modifications to enhance accessibility across different facilities, as mentioned in our plan. So for rest areas and welcome centers, Modifications included replacing pavers with concrete sidewalks, and this change improves accessibility and durability for all visitors. Airports, we have 10. Please note the Burlington International Airport is not a state-owned airport. Enhancements in our airports include line striping and accessible parking spaces. Our airport web pages will be updated with accessibility information. We'll ensure passengers and users are informed about available accessible features. AOT has 9 transportation maintenance districts, and there's 2 offices that have been established since the last transition plan. There's one in White River Junction and a new building in St. Albans. Both are ADA accessible. AOT is directly responsible for only 4 Amtrak stops. The White River Junction and Burlington locations feature ADA compliant platforms, restrooms, waiting rooms, parking, and wheelchair lifts. These modifications demonstrate a commitment to accessibility. So facilities continued. So we're going to discuss the ongoing efforts to enhance accessibility across further items like our central garage. A new ADA accessible site is being designed following the 2023 flood. This initiative ensures further resilience and accessibility. Our AOT offices, both Berry City Place and Dill Building, which we are right now, are fully ADA accessible. These offices demonstrate AOT's commitment to accessibility in its facilities. Our curb ramps are scheduled along with new construction projects as they're evaluated and their compliance work is identified and included in those projects. Pedestrian signals. Since 2020, AOT has completed at least 28 pedestrian signals, and 2 of those enhancing pedestrian safety and accessibility. We do have 4 rail trails in Vermont, and they are accessible, providing inclusive recreational opportunities. Park and ride lots, there are 33 that are state-owned, and the goal is to preserve and improve the performance and condition of the park and ride system. AOT aims to provide safe and accessible facilities. In conclusion, the initiatives reflect AOT's dedication to creating an accessible and inclusive environment for everyone. I feel like I'm repeating myself. As far as communication, accessibility in public meetings, we're committed to making sure that everyone has equal access. We provide free interpretive and translation services, as well as assistive devices and other accommodations, and folks can reach out to me if they need any assistance. AOT complies with key accessibility standards, including the ADA, Section 508, and the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which were recently updated with the new deadline of April of 27, and also Title II. There's a statewide initiative for website accessibility, and AOT currently runs this Universal Digital Accessibility Project through over 60 subject matter experts embedded throughout the agency devoted to this work to ensure that our online content is accessible for everyone, and providing a point of contact so that if folks need the content in different formats, they would be able to reach out, or if they have questions about a program, they would be able to reach that person. AOT values the feedback from organizations. As I mentioned before, we received a lot of feedback from disability rights organizations, and their Vermont Council for Independent Living, Vermont League of Cities and Towns, the Vermont Association for the Blind, and special thanks to the Department of Aging and Independent Living. Through these efforts, AOT is dedicated to ensuring accessibility. And I'm smiling because I keep saying that. The complaint process. Anyone can file a complaint if they feel discriminated against on the basis of disability. This has to be filed within 180 days of the alleged incident. And this can be done through an online form, through the mail, by calling me or sending an email. Complaints are investigated and resolved within 45 days of complaint submission, and we do take complaints seriously. So now we have time to discuss any questions or comments about the draft. The link to the draft is on the QR code, or you can use the link in the chat to find the link to the draft ADA transition plan. And I'll pause here to see if there's any questions or comments. Yes, Franley.
Great. So my name is Franley, and I provide services for services here in Vermont for the deaf and hard of hearing. And so I'm I live in Burlington, and I've been there for 3 years. So with transportation, um, I wanted to mention about that the issues with that. So in terms of reviewing with the ADA transition plan when it comes to transportation, it seems like with this presentation you've talked about interpreting services, but and that part is good. I appreciate that, but I just wondered if you've considered, in the context of with access with deaf and hard of hearing individuals when it comes to transportation. So, so, um, so one thing I'd like to expand on when it comes to communication access and what that would look like, and what would you say about interpreting services and when it comes to communication access? For example, with Burlington, there's not a lot of services there when it comes to communication. Um, So, for example, if a bus is coming soon, if it's coming in a couple of minutes, if there's a cancellation in the public transportation, then somebody's got to look on their phone for that information, what information, any updates happening at that particular station. So, I wanted to know if any of that was reflected or expanded upon communication access that for what's happening at the stations, and what for that for access in terms of what's going on with those public transportation stations.
And
All
how
right,
it's going to
so
be ADA compliant.
Thank you for that comment. I really appreciate it. As I mentioned in the plan, the AOT doesn't operate these transportation services directly. We do oversee them though. And with you being in Burlington, I'm imagining that you're talking about Green Mountain Transit. Most of the drivers have an app that you can
Yes,
use
that's
if
it.
you need interpretation. And I'm sorry, I missed something.
Oh, an app? You said
Yeah,
there's an
it's an
interpretive
app that you can use
services with
for
an app?
over 350 languages, and it also includes ASL, so you could get an interpreter on by video using the app. But as far as communication about when a bus stop is canceled or things about the stations, we'll take that back to Green Mountain Transit and our public transit partners They're not here today, but they're a part of our agency, and we'll see if we can make progress on that so that riders would be more informed. So of those changes, about those changes.
Well, thank you so much for considering that. My second comment, sorry, is related to weather and transportation. You know, when it's cold and all of that, it's pretty important here. And again, I mean, it is related to Green Mountain and transit. But also, you know, other cities, I'm sure that they could all benefit from my comment as well. And I don't know what the other cities have. I don't know what they're, you know, if they follow, you know, a time transit schedule or how they communicate, some like maybe a bus isn't coming. But like if you got to take something at 6 p.m. and Green Mountain Transit was like, nope, they're off schedule and there's no information as to when that bus is going to show up. And so we're constantly missing information. And then they stand and wait for a really long time out in the cold, or maybe while it's raining or other kinds of weather, you know. So what is the plan to be able to communicate, you know, that we just need to increase accessibility, you know, for patrons so that they're not in the colds and they know what's happening. There just seems to be no requirements related to that. And I'm just wondering if that's something that can be discussed.
Definitely. No, that's a valid point. Definitely. I know they have published stops with times listed on their websites, the transit providers do, but I'll have to reach out and see how they handle changes like that. I don't know if there's a way that they could do a listserv so that you could get notified of any changes, or if you could sign up for different routes to get notified, but I will definitely look into that. It's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I know Green Mountain has a real time that you can follow bus route, but it's like after 6 for some reason the real time doesn't work, and so then I guess it seems to stop.
Oh,
I get it's just like not running anymore. So
okay.
sometimes, you know, you have to walk, you know, in order to arrive home. But again, with weather situations, right? That's not ideal.
No.
I also I definitely have more comments, but I definitely want to give other people a chance to, you know, give some feedback as well.
Okay. Okay, so we'll come back to you. Thank you so much. Anyone else? This was definitely great. And, you know, better communication is very important, especially when it comes to poor weather conditions and trying to organize how you're going to catch the bus. So thank you for that.
Yeah. You also mentioned, you know, snow removal, but there's many bus stops that their snow is not removed. And so, I mean, what is the plan to make sure that it's 100% removed and that barrier is no longer there so that the bus can, you know, actually get to the curb and people are not needing to walk around things? I just, you know, who's responsible? And I think that it's important to make that a priority and not just kind of bypass it, you know?
I missed the very beginning of what you said. Is this about specific bus stops? Sorry, I didn't hear the interpreter.
Yeah, in Burlington, the bus stops around the city, especially in downtown, there's, do you know what I'm talking about? There's different bus stops and they have the sign, it's a pole with a big sign that says bus stop here, and it's near the curb.
And they're not accessible?
Because of snow.
No, they're
Oh,
not
this is-
because of snow. The snow isn't removed. They're not
yes.
shoveled out. And there's,
Yep.
especially Pine Street, for example,
Mhm.
there's never any shoveling. There's one, I think there's one bus stop and there's one pavilion that's shoveled and cleared out. But there's lots of bus stops along that route that are not shoveled up.
Are the sidewalks shoveled?
Funny. Great question. The sidewalk area seems to be clear,
Okay,
but then there's like, the mounds, right? That
yeah.
because of that shoveling that then caused the barrier to the actual bus stop.
Right. I'll have to look into that. I'm not 100% if that falls within Green Mountain Transit's purview or if that's something with the city of Burlington. I know they usually take care of the sidewalks, like you said. But as far as the bus stops, I'll have to research that and get back to you. Would you mind putting your either your email, telephone number, or if not, if you don't want to be reached out to directly, I will include these comments and our response into the final draft of the final of our plan. So you can also find it there if you're not comfortable sharing your telephone number or your email.
Yeah, I give you my email. I think that's better. And I don't really want to give out my phone number.
Okay. Yeah, or you can reach out to me directly. My email is on the website and the plan. Thank you. Thank you for putting that in the chat.
Oh, I'll have to see if I can find your email address then. So Amtrak doesn't fall under your domain, correct?
Just 4 stops. But I'd love to hear the comment.
Union.
Okay.
So Union in Burlington. There's no visual announcements of any kind. It's not accessible. There was one staff that was like giving instructions on what to do for when the train arrived. I was there and I know they were verbally giving them. I just kind of followed the people. But there wasn't anything visual in order to get access. I mean, real life situation, like there's just nothing there.
Yes, I've been there and I know what you mean. I followed, we were part of a group of people and I did the same thing. I just followed them. So I'll be sure to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah. So those are just all my concerns. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We will put these as items to fix. And I'll follow up on the snow and also about better communication for changes after 6 o'clock. So thank you for that. I really appreciate your comments.
Great.
Anyone else in the room online? All right, as I mentioned, our plan is to add these comments and questions into the final plan and provide our feedback. So you'll be able to see that there, but I will also email you directly, Friendly, so you can get an answer to your questions that you brought up at this meeting, which were fabulous. So if there's nothing else, then we can wrap up the meeting. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording. And thank you so much.